The summer afternoon in Maple Ridge had started like any other. Bright sun, trimmed hedges, and the faint hum of sprinklers dancing across manicured lawns. My wife, Rachel, was inside finishing a work call while our 7-year-old daughter, Lily, played quietly on the porch swing, her leg brace glinting in the light. The smell of freshly cut grass filled the air until something acrid crept in, a smoky tang that didn't belong. I stepped outside to check the mailbox and froze. 2 houses down, the HOA president, Karen Miller, was presiding over what looked like a neighborhood cleanup burn. A mountain of dried leaves, cardboard, and unbelievably old paint cans crackled in a metal drum. A gust of wind carried embers like orange fireflies straight toward our row of homes. "Karen!" I called out. "You can't burn that here. It's against code." She waved her manicured hand dismissively, her phone balanced between shoulder and ear. "Relax, it's just a few leaves." "HOA business, Daniel. I know what I'm doing." Except she didn't. The wind picked up again, scattering hot ash across the cul-de-sac. One landed in our yard, fizzing on the edge of Lily's drawing pad. She gasped, clutching her stuffed panda. I stomped it out, my pulse racing. Within minutes, gray smoke began to snake through the neighborhood. A neighbor's garden shed caught a tiny flicker. Karen laughed it off, more annoyed about her manicure than the danger she was creating. I snapped photos with my phone, evidence for later, though I hoped I wouldn't need it. Rachel rushed out, eyes wide. "Dan, is that fire legal?" "Not even close." I dialed 911. "We've got open burning near children and hazardous materials. Send someone now." The dispatcher's calm tone barely registered as I tried to keep my cool. Lily coughed softly beside me. Smoke hung in the air thick as fog. I grabbed the garden hose, spraying down the hedge line while Karen argued with another neighbor about HOA authority. "This is community maintenance," she barked. "If you don't like it, take it up with the board." By now, flames licked higher, the air shimmering with heat. The fire was small but fast, creeping toward the fence line that bordered our yard. I ushered Lily and Rachel back inside, closing windows. My training as a state attorney general had taught me patience, but watching negligence unfold in front of my home burned that patience away. Sirens wailed in the distance, 3 minutes after my call. Relief washed over me as a fire truck turned the corner, lights painting the smoke red and blue. The firefighters leapt out, assessing the blaze, their movements sharp and practiced. One of them shouted toward Karen to back away. Instead, she argued. "You can't find me. I am the HOA." I almost couldn't believe it. She stood there, arms crossed, smoke swirling around her like a defiant movie villain. But then a uniformed police officer stepped from the squad car behind the fire truck. "Expression firm, ma'am," he said evenly. "Step away from the fire and keep your hands visible," Karen sputtered. "What?" "I'm maintaining community property." The officer nodded toward me. "Sir, you're the one who called?" "Yes," I said, showing the photos on my phone. "She's burning prohibited materials within 10 feet of homes, and my daughter's outside." He barely needed to glance at the images before gesturing to his partner. "Document this. Get her statement. We'll let the fire chief confirm the violation." Karen's bravado began to falter as firefighters doused the smoldering mess. Wet ash spattered her red heels. The officer continued calmly, taking her name while residents peeked from porches. I could feel the collective shift. Neighbors who once whispered complaints now stood united, watching accountability finally arrive. Rachel put an arm around Lily, whispering reassurance. My daughter still coughed softly, eyes watery but safe. I took her small hand, promising silently that this would never happen again. The fire hissed its last breath under the hose's spray, leaving only steam and the acrid smell of melted plastic. One of the firefighters shook his head. "Could have been a lot worse. Those paint cans were seconds from popping." I nodded, heart still pounding. "I know, and I'm not letting this slide." Karen stood silently now, mascara streaking, her confidence collapsing under flashing blue lights. The officer spoke into his radio, words clipped and official. "Violation of municipal burn code, potential endangerment. We'll need her statement at the station. 3 minutes." That's all it had taken. From danger to justice arriving on our quiet street. And as the last of the smoke drifted away, I realized something else. This wasn't just about a careless fire. It was about an entire system of unchecked authority in our community, one that needed to be challenged. I looked at Rachel, then at Lily. "She almost hurt you," I said quietly. "Now we make sure she can't hurt anyone else." Rachel nodded, determined. The sirens faded, but the sense of reckoning lingered in the summer air. By the time the last hose had been rolled and the fire crew packed away, the neighborhood had turned eerily quiet. Wet pavement reflected the blue lights from the remaining patrol car like a mirror. Lily leaned against Rachel's shoulder inside our living room, clutching a cold pack the paramedics had handed her for the mild smoke irritation. She looked tiny, wrapped in a blanket patterned with cartoon owls, her hair still smelling faintly of the fire. I sat opposite them, phone buzzing non-stop with texts from neighbors. Everyone had footage, video from doorbell cameras, stills from second-story windows, all showing the same thing. Karen Miller, the HOA president, standing defiantly beside an illegal burn pile that had nearly become an inferno. For months, she'd ruled the subdivision like a queen behind her desk at the Maple Ridge office. Tonight, the crown had cracked. A knock rattled the door. When I opened it, Officer Hayes stood there, hat under his arm, clipboard balanced against his palm. "Mr. Shaw, just finishing the incident report. Fire chief confirmed hazardous materials were present. Paint, solvents, propane cans. That's enough for several citations, maybe reckless endangerment if the DA approves." I nodded. "Thank you, officer." "My daughter's fine, thankfully." His expression softened. "Good to hear. The department takes this kind of negligence seriously. She'll have to appear before a magistrate tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" "Municipal code enforcement doesn't waste time when there's proof this clear." After he left, I sank onto the couch beside Rachel. The hum of the refrigerator and Lily's soft breathing filled the silence. Rachel touched my arm. "You're going to handle this, aren't you?" I looked toward the window, where flashing lights still strobed faintly down the street. "I have to. Not just for us, for everyone she's bullied." The next morning, the hospital smelled of disinfectant and coffee. We'd brought Lily in for a precautionary check. Pediatric respiratory ward, room 214. The nurse, cheerful but efficient, clipped a pulse oximeter to her finger. "Smoke exposure's mild," she said. "Some redness in the throat, but no permanent harm." Relief flooded me again, the kind that feels heavy instead of light. Watching Rachel stroke our daughter's hair, I thought about how close we'd come to tragedy because one woman believed a homeowner's title made her invincible. When we left the hospital, local news vans were parked outside Maple Ridge's administrative building. The camera crews had already picked up the story. "HOA president under investigation for illegal burn endangering residents." Karen's name scrolled across the bottom of the screen as reporters interviewed neighbors. Someone must have leaked the footage. Inside, the board members looked shaken. I recognized two of them from community barbecues. Decent people who'd always looked the other way when Karen barked orders. Now they avoided eye contact. "Daniel," one whispered. "We had no idea she'd actually start a fire. She said it was controlled maintenance." "Controlled?" I repeated, letting the word hang like smoke. "You saw the videos." They nodded, shame flickering across their faces. Karen herself emerged from a side office, face pale but chin raised. "You can't be here. This is private HOA property." I held up the incident folder Officer Hayes had emailed me. "Not today, it isn't. The state investigator's coming at noon, and until then, you're suspended from all board duties." Her lip trembled for a split second before she recovered. "You think you can just march in here because you're a lawyer?" "I'm not just a lawyer," I said evenly. "I'm the Assistant Attorney General for this district. And you endangered my child." The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the air conditioner click on. One of the board members muttered, "We didn't know he was AG." Karen's bravado melted. "Daniel, please. It was an accident. The wind changed. I cut her off. The wind didn't load propane cans into a fire drum. Karen, you did." She opened her mouth again, but the double-glass doors swung open and two uniformed code enforcement officers stepped inside with clipboards. "Mrs. Miller?" one asked. "We're here to serve notice of immediate suspension pending investigation." Cameras flashed outside as a reporter caught the moment through the window. For the first time, I saw her shoulders sag. The unshakable HOA president looked suddenly human, frightened, small, unsure. And part of me, the part trained to believe in fairness, felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered Lily's coughing, the plume of smoke curling past our porch swing, and the pity evaporated. That evening, Rachel and I sat on the back steps watching the sky fade from orange to violet. Lily chased fireflies near the fence, her laughter returning like music after a long pause. "You think this will really change things?" Rachel asked. "It has to," I said. "People need to see that power doesn't mean immunity." "Not in a neighborhood, not anywhere." My phone buzzed again, an email from a reporter requesting an official comment. I typed slowly. "Our family is grateful no one was hurt. This incident is a reminder that community leadership requires accountability and care for others." I hit send, then looked back at my family. The scent of wet earth still lingered from the extinguished fire, but the air felt cleaner now, like the neighborhood itself was breathing again. Tomorrow would bring hearings, paperwork, maybe even court. But for the first time in months, Maple Ridge was quiet, and for that single evening, that was enough. The next morning, the Maple Ridge Community Center didn't look like the cheerful space that usually hosted bake sales and book drives. The folding chairs were arranged in rigid rows facing the podium. A temporary sign reading, "Emergency HOA Hearing, Closed Session." The smell of burnt paper still clung to Karen Miller's stack of binders. Daniel Shaw, once just another homeowner, now the Assistant Attorney General who had called the fire department, walked in quietly. He was wearing the same Navy suit he used for state hearings. The weight of his badge inside his pocket was a steady reminder that this wasn't personal revenge, it was duty. The moderator, an elderly board secretary named Mr. Castro, cleared his throat. "We're here to address violations of community safety codes and misuse of HOA authority. Mrs. Miller, please respond to the charges." Karen's hands trembled slightly as she flipped through her notes. "I was attempting a controlled maintenance burn," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "I've done it before without issue." Castro raised an eyebrow. "The fire department's report lists paint solvents, propane, and electrical wire insulation among the materials. That was debris from landscaping projects," she protested. Daniel leaned forward. "Propane is not landscaping debris, and setting it alight 10 feet from family homes isn't maintenance. It's negligence." The room was filled with quiet murmurs. Neighbors who had once feared Karen's sharp letters and fines now spoke softly to one another. For months, she had enforced arbitrary rules. Paint shades too bright, trash cans left out an hour late, and they had complied. But seeing her paperwork laid out beside photos of the fire changed everything. One of the code enforcement officers presented a digital slideshow, images of scorched siding, blackened fences, and a melted swing chain from the park behind the Miller property. Lily's small drawing pad appeared in one slide, its edges brown and curled. Daniel's stomach knotted at the sight. Karen tried to keep control of the narrative. "This is being exaggerated to destroy my reputation. Everyone knows Daniel's position at the state office. He's using his title to humiliate me." The officer looked toward Daniel. "Sir, you want to respond?" Daniel spoke carefully, aware every word might be quoted later. "I'm here as a father whose child was put in danger. My office will review any criminal aspects separately, but right now this board needs to acknowledge its responsibility." Silence again. Then Mrs. Petrov, one of the longest-serving members, stood up. Her Russian accent clipped the words cleanly. "I've been on this board 10 years. We trusted Karen because she sounded confident. Maybe too confident. I vote for immediate suspension and external audit." The secretary nodded slowly, scribbling. One by one, hands rose. The motion carried without opposition. Karen lowered her head. The red blazer that once made her look powerful now looked heavy and out of place. Outside, the press had gathered. When the board announced the suspension, microphones surged forward. "Mr. Shaw, any comment? Will the state pursue charges? Is this the end of Maple Ridge HOA?" Daniel kept his tone measured. "This isn't about ending anything. It's about rebuilding trust." That evening, he drove home past lawns that suddenly looked friendlier. Neighbors waved instead of averting their eyes. Someone had left a basket of muffins on his porch with a note. "Thank you for protecting our kids." Inside, Rachel was reading bedtime stories to Lily, her voice soft under the lamplight. When she saw him, she smiled. "How did it go?" He exhaled. "They suspended her. There'll be an audit, and maybe some state oversight for a while." "Good," she said simply. "I'm tired of living under threats about mailbox paint colors." They laughed quietly. The tension of the last 2 days began to drain away. Still, Daniel couldn't shake the thought that the fire had only been a symptom, the visible spark of a bigger problem, unaccountable power in small places. If it could happen in a sleepy subdivision, it could happen anywhere. He spent the next week compiling documentation, emails from residents, photos of unfair citations, financial records the treasurer reluctantly handed over. Patterns emerged: inflated maintenance charges, selective fines, reimbursements for non-existent landscaping. It was classic low-level corruption hidden behind homeowner apathy. One night he called Officer Hayes. "If I hand you proof of misuse of funds, can the county auditor take over?" "Absolutely," Hayes replied. "The mayor's already aware something's off. Send it over." The next morning, Maple Ridge woke to a new headline: State audit launched after HOA scandal. The community group chat lit up with relief and disbelief. For years, people had whispered about unfairness. Now they were watching the system correct itself in real time. The audit brought more revelations. Not explosive, but quietly telling. Karen had approved contracts with a cousin's landscaping company, billed twice for the same projects, and fined selective families who questioned her authority. The total misused amount was small by government standards, but enormous to a group of ordinary homeowners. At the final meeting before the board's reorganization, Daniel addressed the room. "We don't need to erase Maple Ridge," he said. "We need to remember why we formed it, to keep lawns trimmed, not to control lives." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then strong. Rachel sat near the back, smiling at him through the crowd. Lily waved, her small hand wrapped around the same stuffed panda she'd carried on the day of the fire. Daniel realized something simple but profound. The most effective justice isn't loud or vengeful. It's transparent. Sunlight, not fire, cleans a place. Spring came early to Maple Ridge that year. The charred fence behind the Miller property had been replaced with new cedar panels, and the lawns that once looked like a competition now looked like a community. Patches of clover left for bees, children's chalk drawings stretching across driveways. The neighborhood had learned to breathe again. Karen's case wound its way through the administrative courts. She wasn't jailed. The audit findings led to restitution, fines, and a mandatory ethics program instead. It was anticlimactic, but in a satisfying way. Justice handled by procedure, not outrage. She sold her house quietly a few months later. The new owners planted a row of hydrangeas where the burn barrel had once stood. Daniel declined every interview request after the verdict. He'd said what he needed to say in court. Accountability isn't revenge, it's prevention. The phrase stuck. A local paper used it as a headline, and for a while, Maple Ridge became a case study in small-scale reform. Other HOAs sent representatives to observe how the community had reorganized its board structure, adding open budgeting and term limits. The bureaucracy that once felt suffocating now ran on transparency and quarterly potlucks. On a mild April morning, Daniel found himself walking past the playground where Lily liked to spend her weekends. The new swing set gleamed in the sunlight. She was already there with Rachel, giggling as she pumped her legs. The memory of that smoky afternoon still flickered in the back of his mind sometimes, but each laugh from his daughter dulled it a little more. "Daddy, look," she called. "Higher!" He pushed gently, smiling. "Not too high, Commander. Ground control says you're reaching orbit." Rachel laughed. "You and your metaphors?" He shrugged. "Comes with the job." Behind them, the Maple Ridge sign had been repainted. Below the name, someone had added a new motto: Neighbors First. It wasn't official, but nobody objected. A few days later, the community held its first open-air meeting since the fire. Folding chairs lined the park pavilion. The new board president, a retired teacher named Mrs. Petrov, tapped the microphone. "Before we start, we owe a thank you to the Shaws. Their quick thinking and persistence changed how we run things here." Applause spread through the crowd. Daniel felt his cheeks warm. He hadn't expected recognition. Rachel squeezed his hand, and Lily waved from the front row, proud and slightly confused by all the clapping. When the applause faded, Petrov added, "We've learned that rules should protect people, not power." So our next agenda item, community garden funding. Laughter rippled through the audience. For the first time in years, a Maple Ridge meeting ended with smiles instead of sighs. That night, the Shaws sat on their porch under a canopy of soft stars. Fireflies drifted lazily over the trimmed hedges. Rachel handed Daniel a cup of tea. "You ever think about moving?" she asked quietly. "Not anymore," he said. "Leaving would feel like letting the old Maple Ridge win." She nodded, leaning against him. "Then we stay." The street was peaceful. The faint hum of a lawnmower echoed from a few blocks away, the ordinary rhythm of suburban life restored. Daniel opened his laptop one last time to file the closing report for the state's oversight review. In the comments section, he wrote, "Corrective measures complete. Community stable. Case closed." He paused, then added another line. "Sometimes justice looks like calm after smoke." He saved the file, shut the computer, and watched his daughter chase a lightning bug across the yard. The little light bobbed between the trees, and she laughed, pure, unfiltered laughter that filled the night. It was the sound of safety returning, of a place learning to be kind again.